The 6 words that expose every unfaithful partner, true love and betrayal story. When I first met Claire, she was the picture of charm, radiant smile, warm laugh, and a way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room. My brother, Ethan, fell for her instantly. To everyone else, they seemed like a perfect couple. But sometimes, perfection is just camouflage. Over time, I started noticing a pattern. Whenever Ethan talked about his work or his plans for the future, Claire would respond with the same phrase. You deserve someone who truly understands you. At first, it sounded caring, almost sweet. But the more I heard it, the more it gnawed at me. She said it when he mentioned his dream of opening a small cafe. She said it when he wanted to spend weekends with our family. And she said it again when he confessed he felt like she was becoming distant. Always the same words, delivered with a soft smile that didn't reach her eyes. One night, I walked into a quiet cafe downtown and froze. There was Claire, leaning across the table toward a man I'd never seen before, laughing in that same warm way she used with Ethan. Her hand rested on his wrist. It wasn't a casual touch, it was intimate, like they had their own private world. I didn't confront her right away. Instead, I watched from a distance. She said something, and he laughed, brushing a strand of hair from her face. That's when I heard it, faint but unmistakable. You deserve someone who truly understands you. The same phrase, word for word. It hit me then. Those weren't words of encouragement. They were her way of detaching, of softening the blow before she moved on to someone new. It was her signature exit line, and Ethan wasn't the first to hear it. The next day, I told Ethan what I'd seen. His face went pale, but he didn't explode. He just nodded slowly, like a puzzle had finally clicked into place. He told me she'd been saying that line more and more lately. Ethan confronted her that night. I don't know all the details, but I do know he came home alone, his ring in his pocket. Claire didn't even deny it. She just said, I told you, you deserve someone who truly understands you. Like it was some kind of twisted gift. Weeks later, Ethan learned the man from the cafe had been in her life for months. Friends hinted they'd seen them together at events. That line she always used wasn't an accident. It was her way of excusing herself from the damage she caused. Now, whenever I hear someone use that phrase, I pay attention. Because sometimes, what sounds like kindness is really the first crack in the foundation, a warning sign that love is being replaced with something else. And once you hear it, you can't unhear it. Ethan didn't fall apart the way I expected. Instead, he became quiet, almost methodical in the way he processed what had happened. He didn't chase her for answers. He didn't beg. He just let her go. But I could see the hurt in his eyes. It wasn't just betrayal. It was the feeling of having been played. One evening, he told me that he had started thinking back over their entire relationship. The trips she had cancelled last minute, the sudden work events on weekends, the phone calls she would take in another room. And every time she drifted away, that same line would follow. It became clear that Claire's Sekundephrase wasn't just something she said. When she was unfaithful, it was a shield. A way to rewrite the narrative so she looked like the generous one. As if ending The relationship was for the other person's benefit. Ethan said the worst part was how normal it all felt in the moment. You hear those words, he told me, and for a second, you actually believe them. You start thinking, maybe they're right, maybe you do deserve better. But then you realize they're just using it to free themselves from guilt. I asked if he thought Claire had ever really loved him. He didn't answer right away. After a long pause, he said, maybe she did, in her own way. But for people like her, love isn't about loyalty, it's about novelty. And when the newness fades, so do they. In the weeks that followed, Ethan started noticing the same behavior in other couples. A coworker's girlfriend who always cancelled plans. A neighbor's wife who spoke in vague, non-committal terms. And more than once, he overheard that same exact line. It became almost eerie-like, discovering a secret code that unfaithful people use without realizing it. You deserve someone who truly understands you had turned into a warning bell in his mind. And once you hear the bell, you can't ignore it. Months later, Ethan met someone new, Sophie. She was direct, honest, and never sugarcoated her feelings. If she was upset, she said so. If she was happy, you knew it. And not once did she utter that cursed line. That alone was enough to make Ethan believe there was still hope. Claire, on the other hand, faded into the background. We heard rumors of another breakup, another man leaving her. I couldn't help but wonder if she'd said it to him to sit rehearsed. Phrase that felt like compassion, but was really the start of an exit. To this day, Ethan warns people, if you hear those words, pay attention. It's not about what they're saying, it's about what they're planning. And every time I think about it, I realize just how much truth there is in that. It wasn't long before Sophie heard the story too. She listened quietly as Ethan explained the phrase and what it had come to mean. Instead of laughing it off, she looked him in the eye and said, "Then I guess my job is to make sure you never hear it again." That was the first time I saw Ethan truly smile in months. Still, old wounds have a way of lingering. Whenever Ethan saw someone tilt their head and give that gentle, almost pitying smile before saying, "You deserve someone who truly understands you," his shoulders would tense. It was like a trigger, a reminder of everything he'd lost. One night, while out with friends, Ethan overheard a conversation at the next table. A woman leaned in toward her partner and whispered the phrase, "Verad for Verad." Ethan's jaw tightened. I could tell he wanted to warn the man, to tell him what was coming, but he stayed silent. Later, he told me, "It's not my place to interfere. Some lessons people have to see for themselves." No one could have convinced me about Claire until I saw her with my own eyes. I understood. The truth, no matter how ugly, is something you have to face head-on. By the following year, Ethan and Sophie had moved in together. Life felt lighter, steadier. But then, out of nowhere, a message popped up on Ethan's phone. It was Claire. Just for words, "Can we talk?" My heart sank for him. He didn't reply right away. Instead, he stared at the screen for a long time. Finally, he opened the message and there it was. Oval of text filled with apologies, and right in the middle, the phrase, You deserve someone who truly understands you." Ethan laughed not a bitter laugh, but a genuine one. He handed me the phone and said, "She still doesn't get it. This isn't an apology. It's her trying to feel good about walking away again." He deleted the message without a second thought. That moment felt like closure. Claire hadn't on a neat hiatus. He'd outgrown her, and the weight she once had in his life was gone. The phrase that used to break him now only proved how far he'd come. It's strange how a simple sentence can carry so much meaning. For Ethan, it was once the sound of heartbreak. Now, it was nothing more than background noise, just words from someone who never knew what real commitment meant. In the end, he realized the real lesson wasn't about Claire at all. It was about recognizing the signs, trusting your instincts, and never ignoring the quiet red flags that tell you love might not be what it seems. In the end, he realized the real lesson wasn't about Claire at all. It was about recognizing the signs, trusting your instincts, and never ignoring the quiet red flags that tell you love might not be what it seems. After that, Ethan seemed lighter than ever. It was as if Claire's message had been the final ghost haunting him, and deleting it set him free. He started focusing on his work again, picking up projects he'd abandoned during the darker months. One weekend, Sophie convinced Ethan to join her on a hiking trip. As they stood at the top of a cliff, looking over the valley, she told him, "I know you've been through things that made you question love, but I'm not here to make you doubt. I'm here to make you believe again." Ethan later told me that hearing those words meant more than he could explain. It wasn't just reassurance, it was the exact opposite of what Claire had always said. Instead of subtly pushing him away, Sophie was pulling him closer. But life has a way of testing you. Months later, Sophie's old friend from college came to visit. Ethan noticed they were unusually close. Inside jokes, long conversations, late-night texts. The old paranoia crept in, whispering that maybe he'd heard this story before. He didn't confront Sophie immediately. Instead, he watched, listened, trying to separate fact from fear. It was then he realized he wasn't just afraid of Sophie leaving, he was afraid of hearing that phrase again. The one that had shattered him once. One evening, Sophie sat him down. "I know you've been worried," she said, "and I can tell you've been holding back. But I need you to understand there's nothing between me and Alex. You're the one I choose every single day." Her honesty was a stark contrast to Claire's evasive warmth. Sophie didn't mask problems behind rehearsed lines. She addressed them head-on. And for Ethan, that was the reassurance he needed to let the past go a little more. Claire eventually married someone else, but her marriage ended within a year. Word got around that she'd been unfaithful again. And once more she'd left with the same phrase, leaving another person wondering what they'd done wrong. Ethan no longer felt anger toward her, just a quiet pity. She keep running until she realizes it's not about finding someone who understands her, he told me. It's about learning to understand herself. By then, the phrase had lost all its power over him. It was no longer a scar, it was a warning sign he could spot from a mile away. A reminder of how far he'd come and how much stronger he had become. Ethan started sharing his story online, not for sympathy, but to help others recognize the signs he once ignored. To his surprise, hundreds of people reached out, saying they'd heard the exact same phrase before being cheated on or left. It was like uncovering a secret pattern in human behavior. Some messages were heartbreaking people who'd given up years of their lives, all while being slowly distanced by someone they loved. Others were messages of gratitude from people who had walked away before the worst happened, simply because they recognized the words. Ethan began speaking at small relationship seminars, telling people it's not just about the phrase. It's about the emotional drift behind it. If you feel someone is emotionally packing their bags, listen to that feeling. His calm but direct style made people trust him. One evening, Sophie joined him at one of these events. As he spoke, she sat in the front row, smiling proudly. Afterward, she whispered, "You've turned something painful into something powerful. That's rare." Ethan realized she was right. He'd transformed his wound into a warning for others. Meanwhile, Claire remained a ghost from the past. Occasionally, someone from their old social circle would mention her, usually with a story of another failed relationship. It seemed she hadn't learned, still using the same exit line, still unable to face herself. Ethan didn't judge her anymore. He had outgrown the need for revenge or closure. Sometimes, he told me, people get stuck in their own loops. You can't drag them out. You can only make sure you're not standing in the same circle. His relationship with Sophie deepened. They traveled together, built a small home, and talked about starting a family. He knew she might not always be perfect, but she was present, engaged, and honest. And for him, that was everything. One night, sitting on their porch, Sophie asked, "Do you ever think about her?" Ethan thought for a moment and said, "Sometimes, but it's not longing, it's gratitude. Without her, I might never have recognized the kind of love I really wanted." The past no longer hurt him. It had become a tool. He could spot manipulation wrapped in kindness. He could warn others without bitterness in his voice. He had learned that sometimes the most dangerous words are the ones spoken softly. And so, whenever he heard someone say, "You deserve someone who truly understands you," he didn't flinch anymore. He simply smiled, knowing that those words had once broken him, but now they no longer had any power at all. Years later, Ethan and Sophie celebrated their 10th anniversary. Friends and family gathered, many of whom had followed Ethan's journey from heartbreak to healing. During his toast, Ethan shared the lesson that had shaped his life. Love is not proven by the words you say, it's proven by the actions you repeat. After the party, a young man approached him quietly. "I think my girlfriend is about to leave me," he said, "because she told me I deserve someone who understands me." Ethan's heart sank, but he also knew exactly what to say. He told the man, "It doesn't always mean betrayal, but it does mean something's wrong. Don't ignore it. Have the hard conversation now, before you're blindsided later." The man nodded, grateful for the warning that Ethan himself had once needed. That night, Ethan sat with Sophie on the couch, reflecting on how far he had come. "If I could go back," he said, "I wouldn't erase what happened. It made me who I am." and it brought me here to you. Sophie rested her head on his shoulder. Then I guess Claire accidentally did you a favor, she said, teasingly. Ethan chuckled. Yeah, just not the kind she intended. He thought about the people still out there, stuck in relationships built on half-truths and gentle lies. He hoped that maybe, somewhere, his story would give them the push they needed to walk toward something better. In time, the phrase lost its sting entirely. It became almost like a harmless artifact, a relic from a past life. When he heard it, he no longer felt pain. He simply remembered the journey and the resilience it had built in him. Even if Claire never changed, Ethan had. And that, he realized, was the only ending that truly mattered. He couldn't rewrite her choices, but he could control his own. And so, he lived by one unshakable truth. Love that lasts doesn't push you away under the guise of kindness. It holds you closer, even when things get hard. Anything less is just an exit dressed up as mercy. With Sophie's hand in his, Ethan finally closed that chapter forever. The words that once marked the end of his world had become nothing more than a footnote in a much greater love story, one built on truth, loyalty, and the courage to never settle for less.